Welcome back, High Floor Heroes. This is Chad, and this is the High Floor Fantasy Show. When you're done here, like, comment, subscribe, click the notification bell. Do me a favor, please don't smash anything. It's just a click. I abhor violence, so please no smashing. Just click on the notifications if you're watching on YouTube. All right, I got week 2 quarterback numbers here. This is where it starts to get good now that we've got multiple games played. Now we have averages and standard deviation, things like that. We've got a floor and a ceiling for each player. Last week, their floor, their ceiling, and their total and their average was all the same number. But now the good stuff. Okay, number 1 for the week, 2 weeks in a row, Kyler Murray. Floor rating of 100, standard deviation of 1.17, which is fairly consistent. Let's see, 30. Yeah, he was only like less than 2 fantasy points different in each week. Stud, I can't tell you much about the studs that you don't already know. Let's take a look at what Kyler did. 29 completions on 36 attempts. That's an 80% completion percentage for 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, 5 carries for 31 yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. Just over 33 fantasy points. Gotta love it. Moving on. Number 2, Tom Brady. Floor rating of 87.46. Standard deviation. Now, he is incredibly consistent so far. 0.32 standard deviation. He was less than 1 fantasy point apart in weeks 1 and 2. 24 for 36 completions. 24 completions on 36 attempts. Let me say that a different way. 67% completion percentage. 276 yards for 5 touchdowns. That's a whopper. He's got 1 carry for 6 yards. He's very, let's just say, statuesque. Statuesque, that's a good way to put it. Keep slinging it, man. Number 3, Patrick Mahomes coming in with a floor rating of 79.61. Okay, so far he's the least consistent. He's not the least consistent out of the top 10, but standard deviation of 5.8. Let's see here. 24 completions on 31 attempts, 77% completion percentage, 343 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 1 carry for 3 yards. That's kind of statuesque as well. No rushing touchdowns. Number 4. Now, this is where things get interesting. Derek Carr is up here again. Floor rating of 74.83. Man, these guys are being super consistent. He's also less than 1% standard deviation, 0.95. 28 completions on 37 attempts, 75% completion percentage, 382 yards. Anytime you see him getting up around 400 yards, man, that's a good game for 2 touchdowns, 4 carries for 9 yards, just over 24 fantasy points. Number 5, let Russ cook. Russell Wilson comes in with a floor rating of 72.31, standard deviation of 2.02. 22 completions on 31 attempts, 71% completion percentage, 343 yards, passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 22 completions on 31 attempts, completion percentage of 71% for 343 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 carries for 16 yards, and just over 23 fantasy points. Coming in at number 6, Daniel Jones with a floor rating of 69.93, standard deviation of 4.88. Not the most consistent, also not the least. Man, I tell you what, this has been a surprise. Daniel Jones putting up the QB1 numbers. I didn't see it coming. How many of you, who got him had him on the bench on Thursday night? And Heineke too. I mean, I had all kind of bench points that night, but nobody would have predicted this. 22 completions on 32 attempts for a completion percentage of 68.8, 249 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, 9 carries for 95 yards. Love the mobile quarterback. Just over 29 fantasy points. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Number 7, Kirk Cousins. He's my guy. 68.76. Floor rating of 68.76. Standard deviation of 1.52. Very consistent. I have been high on him in the Superflex leagues for a long time. And I got him later rounds, and he's putting up the numbers. 22 completions on 32 attempts for a completion percentage of 68.8. 244 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 2 carries for 35 yards, and just over 25 fantasy points. I say, if you invested in him in the middle to late rounds, if you're in a 1 quarterback league, I do 2 super flex and 2 quarterbacks. But if you're in a 1 quarterback league, I think he's a starter. Number 8, Jalen Hurts. Now, I have not been high on him, and so I can be wrong about things. He comes in at number 8 with a floor rating of 66.78, standard deviation of 5.44, so he's kind of in the middle on consistency. I just haven't been high on the Philly offense, really. I don't know. I just stayed away. Who was the other one? Indianapolis. I didn't mess with them. I haven't messed with San Francisco. But we take a look at what Hurts did in week 2. 12 completions on 23 attempts. 52% completion percentage. 190 passing yards. 10 carries for 82 yards. So he's scrambling. And not quite 22 fantasy points. I suppose, if you got him, you're going to start him. But he wasn't one of the guys that I was targeting. That whole team. Number 9, okay, here it gets interesting here. Lamar Jackson, he's broken into the top 10. Floor rating of 66.67. Okay, out of the top 10 so far, he is the least consistent with a standard deviation of 10.11. Between week 1 and week 2, he had almost a difference of almost 14 fantasy points. Now, granted, it was over 22 in week 1 and over 36 points in week 2. But this floor rating, it looks at 5 things: the average, the total, the player's real floor, the player's standard deviation, and the number of games played. So when you combine all those numbers together in this formula that I developed, it helps you weed out, obviously he's still in the top 10, but that kind of inconsistency, 14-point swing in a week, you can lose by 14 points. That can lose your week for you. So this floor rating is important because it does identify these players that fluctuate like crazy. 18 completions on 26 attempts for a completion percentage of 69, 239 yards, 1 touchdown, 16 carries, over 100 yards. Anytime your quarterback is getting over 100 rushing yards a game, that's a cool thing. The quarterback should be the largest and perhaps in some ways the most productive running back on the team if you're running an offense like this. And Lamar is, showing us that that's what he's doing. Number 10, kind of another surprise, Jared Goff, floor rating of 66.08, standard deviation of 7.35. Not terribly consistent. Almost over a 10-point difference in fantasy points from week 1 to week 2. 26 completions on 36 attempts for a completion percentage of 72. 246 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Did throw an interception, did fumble the ball once. 4 carries for 46 yards. I'm still interested in TJ Hawkinson, perhaps DeAndre Swift, but I don't have Jared Goff on any of my teams. But we'll see, cracking into the top 10. Okay, we're going to take a quick break and come back with quarterbacks 11 through 25, but you got to be on Patreon for that. If you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, click the notification bell. Do me a favor, please don't smash anything. As I've said before, I abhor violence. It's just a click. Go check me out on Patreon, Instagram, High Floor Fantasy, Twitter, @HighFloorTweets. If you check me out on Patreon, you can get more audio, more video, and you can get access to the whole universe of player floor ratings that I cover. I put up PDF files that you can download and print. They're very colorful, and they give you a lot of information, a lot more than what you're getting from the pod or just on the YouTube channel. So check it out. I appreciate you. Thanks for listening.